much for joining today's session. My name is Casey Marshall, and I am on the marketing team here at Miro. And today you are in the Becoming a Great Agile Organization, Change Management from Change Makers. Today's presentation, our speakers are Bob Galen, Principal Agile Coach at Vaco, and then Mary Thorn, Agile Practice at Vaco.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Galen, and I have my esteemed colleague,
Mary Thorn.
Yes.
How's everyone doing?
I hope you're all doing well. As Casey was saying, this is an interactive session, so we want some questions from you all. And Casey's going to give them to you. We have some that we're going to prime the pump with, but I actually want to lay the gauntlet down a little bit. I want to challenge everyone to challenge us. So we are pretty expert Agile coaches, enterprise Agile coaches. We've done a lot of transformations. We're not big-headed about it, but we have a lot of knowledge and we'd like to share it. But we need some questions to drive that. So maybe you could even look at this as a stump the chumps kind of thing, where you can ask some hard questions and see how we respond. Mary, what do you want to start with? Do you want to maybe what makes a great Agile organization? What are some of the characteristics of a great Agile organization? What do you think they are?
That's a great question. I mean, I think first, I think there is I call it an Agile transformation team, but I think there's a group of leaders up top that think of Agile as a journey, and they are aligned and they come together in some type of cadence where they're aligned on the items that they need to work through, and they aligned from a product tech ops perspective of what are the transformative items that these organizations need to do through their Agile journey. So some of the best Agile organizations I've seen really take that to heart and even do things like they do sprint. As leaders, they sprint and they do retrospectives on how they can be better. One of the organizations I work with actually shows in the organization sprint reviews, the sprint review for the Agile transformation team and what they're working on to drive the organization. So just trying to really permeate transparency around being an Agile organization at the sprint review. So I really think that's one of the keys to being a really good Agile organization. What do you want to add to that, Bob?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's an eat your own dog food kind of thing where how can you lead an organization if the leader, to be Agile, if the leaders aren't willing to sort of operate in that way? That sounded very tactical, Mary. I'm picking on you a little bit. So that's a very tactical sort of thing. I'm going to come at it from a different direction. I think actually part of it, what makes a great Agile organization is joy. I'm going to use a very soft and squishy term where I think leaders and the organization tries to set up an ecosystem where people come in and they have fun doing what they do. I want the teams to come in and really sort of, there's a buzz at a team level and they're delivering great things. There's a buzz at a program level where people feel like they're solving the customer's problems. There's a buzz at a leadership level and a portfolio level where road mapping is going on, right? And there's a lot of capacity in the organization, and sort of they're knocking the doors down of their clients, right? They're exceeding their expectations, and I think sort of you could almost measure the maturity of a transformation or the maturity of an organization. I know this sounds soft, but by the joyometer that they have of how much buzz, how much joy, how much fun is going on in the organization. So yours was tactical, mine was not even strategic. It was sort of fuzzy. React to that.
I get it. I mean, the people on the phone that, I think it's do what you love and love what you do. And hopefully the culture of the company that when you wake up in the morning, you don't dread going into work, you actually are really excited about it. Right. And so I hear you. And what I guess it's a yes and is culture eats practices every day. So if you've seen the books and everything written about it, if you can have the best Agile Scrum practices in the world, but if you don't have a culture of continued transparency, inspection and adaptation and continuous improvement, then it's not going to bring you joy. So my point is joy is maybe a measure, maybe employee engagement score is the same type of measure from a tactical perspective, but it really is really defining what the culture is, and that's one of the things I've seen really good Agile organizations do is take on culture shaping events through the organization to say, what do we want our culture to be, and having the culture actually being helped defined by the leaders. I did one of my clients last year did a culture shaping exercise where, as a leadership group, we created a team leadership working agreement, just like a Scrum team would be. But what is our working agreement as a leadership group? And that was a goal. Part of that goal for that was to create what we want the culture to start to look like, and how we're going to be responsible and accountable to that. So yes, and Bob, to your joy, but I think there is tacticalities of how do you bring joy? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's an outcome or an output, right, from some of the, I was just picking on you, right? I was using the tactical word against you. But no, I think it's both sides of it. You said something interesting. I'm going to get this quote wrong, and I'm sort of quoting myself, but I think leaders people have this argument of where does culture come from? Is it grown from the bottom up? Is it a top-down construct? Is it an inside-out construct? I subscribe to leaders probably are 80% responsible for setting the organizational culture. And I think it's somewhere between what they reward and what they tolerate. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what behaviors are they rewarding and what behaviors will they tolerate? And in between those dimensions is the culture of the organization. What I mean by tolerate is, for example, that notion of brilliant jerks, you know what I mean? Where you can have a brilliant jerk in an organization. If the leadership team tolerates that, then you're going to have brilliant jerks in the organizational landscape or in the culture, and you're going to sort of, reward that. That's the space.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
And I agree. And so it's interesting, Bob, but we had a comment from one of our people on listening to us online. He said, true quote from my VP of Dev yesterday: "We are not here to have fun. We are here to get stuff done for our customers." How would you influence this leader to find that joy you're talking about?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I might actually, talk to them, almost show them that the culture that they're creating. It's not in there, and I don't know this culture, but historically there was this notion of a death march where leaders are very driven towards dates and towards customers, and their little hearts were in the right place, and they would commit to dates, and they would drive the teams right to produce results. And that there's this notion of a death march, and I'm not implying that this leader wants that, but you can see that, you can talk to the team. So how do you influence them? I'd actually give them a lens to their team, right? Like, is there any fun out? I mean, they're not leading robots, they're leading people. That, they could look at attrition, they could look at, are they getting quality? Are they getting initiative? Are they getting employee engagement? Are they getting creativity out of the team? It's not, I don't think the world is just deliver as many stories or features as we can and blindly just plop them in the customer's lap. There's a whole world of creativity, like solving the customer's problems. And I would sort of show them the organization that they're creating. So one idea was like walkabout, invite them to walk about the organization and give them a lens and give them sort of a guided tour of what have they created. And there might be an aha there of, I want to get stuff done, but I don't want to grind people up into dust along the way. So that would be one way, is like a walkabout might be a way to do that. Mary, what do you think?
I think what you're talking about is like a Gemba walk, but yeah.
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 I have this Australian thing going today. I had like a Foster's, so I'm talking about I'm doing a walkabout. But go ahead.
So I mean, yeah, Gemba walks are good. I think one of the things you nailed it on a couple of things. One is some of these leaders don't look at the metrics. So what is your employee engagement score? What is your attrition numbers? Many of my clients, I actually do like either the Spotify health check model on the team level and kind of roll that up in a view to say teams are happy or not. Then I trend that to say, watch attrition over time. If you have an unhappy team, let's see how many people turn over on that team. So there is very much metrics that have been proven that show that team happiness, actually teams are more productive, and then therefore attrition is lower. And so really trying to help them say, like, there really is a need for people to be happy. Here is the kind of the data aspects. I've done a lot with fintech companies. So if you're a fintech company, they need the data to show, like, maybe we do need to look at this a different lens.
Absolutely. There's a book, I hope I get the author right. Richard Sheridan wrote a book. He's the CEO of Menlo Innovations in Michigan, and he wrote a book called Joy. I think that's the primary title. And he talks about his story as a CEO at Joy Inc. Thank you, Andrew. And I think that might be something that and he's done some videos as well, some entrepreneurial videos where he's done tours of Menlo, and I think they're in YouTube. And that actually might be something where I would share it with the VP. I might even invite the leadership team. So part of that quote is the true quote from my VP of development. One way to change their view might be not to change them, but to talk to their peers. So talk to the leadership team and see if they can get some peer pressure and exposure to, to help them become a leadership team and refocus on joy. So that might be something else to look at. Mike talks about he does industrial tourism all the time, some free and some paid. Absolutely. So a lot of paid stuff as well. I mean, he almost has a micro business related to the Joy Inc. stuff. But again, he's not doing it for that. I love people who walk their talk, and Sheridan walks his talk. He's not selling Joy Inc. He was selling a kick-ass software development and services organization that is growing and that is also really well balanced with its people. And they use Agile as part of that. They use innovation as part of that. And then he just happened to write about it because it was so successful. So lessons learned might be good there. Mary, I want to change gears a little bit. And everyone, I love this dialogue. Keep hitting us with questions. Stump the chumps.
I don't know if you look in the question and answer section. There's about 8 questions. Do you want to look at one of those, or do you want to go to something else?
Why don't you take one? Just want to tee it up.
All right, let's see. I'm going to get a good one. How do you convince your team to be agile while they feel the leadership doesn't seem to ever have a solid path because of lots of indecision? That one got pushed up from the Q&A section. 6 ones. So how do you convince your team to be agile while they feel leadership doesn't seem to ever have a solid path because of lots of indecision? So this is one of the biggest challenges I think Bob and I face every day from an enterprise transformation is prioritization of initiatives and having too much work in progress. Example is I walked into an organization last year and they said, oh, our Scrum teams are horrible and they never deliver. Well, when I look at it, they had 100 developers and they had 100 projects in progress. And I'm like, so you have 100 priority number ones, and there was stuff getting delivered just by, a little bit every day. And so that indecision, that lack of prioritization, that lack of focus on, say, the top 10 is a huge problem. And so, I don't know if this is you can't convince your team to be agile in this situation. This is a leadership, hey guys, here's the effect of your indecision on the team. Here's the amount of cost of delay. Here's the rework. Here's the, loss of productivity because decisions aren't being made. What you have to do is you really have to start to work with your leaders, show them the effects that have on the Scrum team, and then work with them to give them, ways to do better portfolio management. Bob, what do you think?
There's this notion of leaders going first. In our transformations, we're not always successful, but we try to go into an organizational transformation. I know that's a grandiose word, but just an agile adoption or whatever you want to call it. And we try to connect to the leaders first. And what we found is that top-down view is the best way to make the transformation. We want them to be trained first. We want them to be coachable. We want them to understand what Agile is and is not. We want them to understand what good metrics are and what they are not, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to connect to them. When we do that, we have a pretty successful rate, right? And it goes up and down in the organization. What I'm trying to say is I think teams, they really need, and Mary, you were saying this, they need the leaders to go along. It's really hard for grassroots adoption without some leadership alignment. I mean, you can get grassroots bottom-up adoption in the beginning, but the leaders have to get on board because they can be so disruptive to it. They don't have to be on board at the same rate. They don't have to be learning. They don't have to be as excited as the teams might be early on. They don't have to know what story points are exactly, etc. But they really need to sort of, they need to be on board. Mark Fuller said something, can you use lead time and cycle time to help paint the picture? I do think, and Mark, I think you nailed it there, the teams can be painting pictures. The teams, and this goes to the next question, what suggestions you have on how to push Agile change from the bottom up? I think the teams can role model, like you can lead the leaders to some degree. You can show them what Agile looks like. You can lead them with the metrics. You can lead them with sort of the value proposition and get them excited because you're role modeling. Now, I do think those leaders can lag on that, and they can't always be led by the teams. But I think there's a tremendous amount of role modeling. Like one of the Scrum values is courage. The teams can show courage to go into a leader and have a hard discussion with them that they're not on board, right? They're not supporting the Agile initiative. And you can have this flattened mentality. Yes, you report to them, but look at them as a colleague and have a really challenging discussion. Mary, nail me. That probably was off base. What do you think?
No, I mean, having the Agile push from bottom up, it only works to some point in time, right? And we do, Bob and I have seen what I would call, it's the Jcurve adoption, and you try to have some bottom up teams. They start to do Agile themselves. They get into the bottom of the Jcurve without the leadership adoption, and the leaders will tell them when things are getting tough to stop. So you actually end up worse than where you were when you started. And one of the things that we're trying to say is leaders have to come along with the Scrum teams. And a lot of times when leadership changes, that's when that Jcurve is even more effective. Is they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna come in and do it my way. And so if you don't have the whole leadership team bought in with you, when things go bad, they're going to make you go back to the way things used to be. And so just really thinking about how as a Scrum team level, when things go bad, how do you not revert back? And it's really hard to do that if you don't have some leadership alignment to help you through those failures.
Carell, and I might not get the name right, Liebenberg, said something. Can you share some war stories? What was your largest, most hardline waterfall org that you turned away from the dark side? And what were the first 3 things you did when you started working with this client? I want to turn that around first, Mary. What were the conditions that they had to be in first? So before we talk about what we did, what are some of the entry conditions that you need? I'll tee one up. An organization needs to be in pain. They need to have a driving force. It can't just be, we read an HBR article around Agile and it says we get a 5 times multiplier and we're going to do that. So there has to be some self-awareness and some pain recognition and some humility, I think. So I would look at that as maybe something we need to enter in so you can connect as a coach. What entry characteristics? Any more from you?
I mean, I've worked at organizations where they really weren't in pain, but they knew that if they didn't do something differently, they needed. So they had a why. Maybe I think the better way characteristic is you have to have a formidable. Simon Sinek start with the why. With any transformation, you need to actually understand what behaviors you want to change and what this transformation is going to do. And so, an entry condition to me is having a way to sell the why to want people to follow you. I guess it's kind of like the switch model too, right? The called switch. But, I think we stated the first, I'll do one of the top 3 things that we did when we start working with the client that is hugely waterfall, because we do deal with this a lot of times. I think we've mentioned it, but I just want to put the stake in the line. We create that Agile transformation team, right? We create that transformation team. We get them certified Agile leadership training and do some type of culture shaping, but we align on what this transformation looks like. We're going to run them in a Scrum perspective. They're going to have a backlog. They're going to do all the sprint events, and they are going to lead from top. Bob, what's the second maybe you would do?
I mean, I'm coming back to my other one, and I'm stuck on people. So it's not in sequence, but I think there needs to be a people centricity. So this goes back to like the conditions of success and it goes back to Joy Inc., where I think what I'm looking for is an organization that really respects their people, that really values their people, that understands that it's not about pointy-headed managers or leaders, but it's people first, their teams first, to delight the customer, and then leadership follows that. So where are they at on that curve? I'm looking for.
And you're meaning really like empower, like people that really mean I want to empower the teams, right?
Or I would say trust the teams. Yes, empower the teams, but the teams come to you and they tell you, you hit them with a date, or you hit them with a set of features and they say, that's a stupid idea, I have a better idea, and you listen to them. Or you hit them with a date and they say, that's impossible, we can only do that in two times that amount of effort, and you listen to them rather than driving the date. So I think there's there's empowerment, and then there's this implicit trust that we have to do, not blind trust, right? I'm not suggesting the inmates run the asylum, but at the same time, if you've hired these great people, what's that job quote? Jobs talks about, you hire great people, then you get the hell out of their way as a leader to some degree, right? So where's the organization on that curve?
Right. Other things that I would add were, three things you did when we started working with clients, so basically, culture and people, we talked about leadership. We've talked about, the other thing is, I know this sounds like tongue in cheek, but having a mission, a vision, and a strategy, right? To get to that point and really defining that for the organization so that people can align from all the way down. One of the things I've seen in a lot of organizations is they don't know what their vision is, where they want to be 2 to 5 years. They don't know what their mission is, or how they're going to accomplish that vision over the next year, how they're going to do that. They've lacked to find their roadmap to align to that mission and vision for the next 6, 12, 18 months. And so then when it comes down to the teams and the organizations, the teams are working on things that don't even align to roadmaps, mission or vision. And so one of the things is really try to get alignment from top down on vision, mission, roadmap, and then the next quarter of work that's going to align to all that stuff. And so really working with that waterfall organization, understanding where they're trying to get to from a product side of the house, and trying to break that down into chunks and get it aligned from top to bottom is something I do a lot of times.
Cool. I'm going to switch gears. I was scrolling down through the questions now that I could figure out how to use the Q&A box. And MC Moore has a question. And you can do the same thing, Mary. Look for something that floats your boat. Do you have suggestions to re-energize the transformation when the organization has hit a plateau? And I was just talking to someone at a coaching conversation in our practice yesterday. Jim Grundner and I were talking, and we were talking about, is it healthy or is it good when like continuous improvement? So I'll draw this, not a Jcurve, but we're sort of continuous improvement in an agile transformation is sort of this accelerated discovery. It's not just more throughput. It could be throughput, it could be improved quality, et cetera. But at some point, in my experience, agile organizations, the transformations, people poop out because continuous improvement is so challenging, and they might flatten out a bit and take a pause. They're really recharging their batteries. And then how do you accelerate? So I worked at one organization where we had, over 3 years, we had several of those plateaus. One reaction is, I think they're natural, so don't overreact. Like agile transformation can be exhausting. So a 3-month flatline where people are just sort of, getting a feel for themselves and just re-energizing is fine. Now, I think what I noticed is you have to then change the inflection again. So how do you do that? I think leaders can tell stories. You can re-energize the retrospectives. You can inspire some ideation on the team. You can do an open space. You can have an organizational open space where you ideate a bunch of things like next step. So my point is, I think in order to continue, there's these energizers you have to do and do them with the team, but also don't overreact and expect continuous improvement and acceleration. Allow the team to rest a little bit, or not the team, the organization to rest a little bit. I don't think we do enough of that. Mary, did you find one that you like?
I'm going through this. I like Michelle's talk. Hey, Michelle. At the very end, she asked kind of the same sort of question, right? Transformations don't tend to follow a straight path. It's often one step forward and 2 steps back. How do you keep your energy and enthusiasm up in the face of setbacks? How do you inspire others to keep, the fires going? That's that to me. That is that's the job of a leader, to help with, inspiring through all that, right? That was one of my favorite things as being a leader within an agile practices at a company is, guys, I know we just took 2 steps back, but man, we made some progress and we can keep doing it again. It's hard though, and I get it. But it's one of those things where agile coaches, we are change agents, and our job is to continue to always find ways to inspire, to keep the change moving. And so trying different tactics, and keep that. But let me come back to the transformation team. If you have that transformation team and keeping them aligned and you having that backlog, to Bob's point, we might take a quarter off because we just had too much change, but we still are continuing to drive that backlog of transformation. So if you have some type of leadership team that are helping you through that transformation, it's not just the agile coaches. You can push through that time of falling back and people just like, I'm done, I'm change fatigued.
One of the things in our title was change agents. And I think, so let's not just talk about change agents in the organization, let's talk about us. So people who are listening to us, and Mary and I think we have to be really cognizant of our energy level. We have to be really cognizant of what re-energizes us. So what are some of those things? I actually like doing that, energizing me. So public speaking, engaging in talks, finding a mentor. Mary and I meet for breakfast sometimes. We've done that for years, and we mentor each other. So finding people that you enjoy working with. We participate in local agile groups. We go to conferences. I write blogs. And believe it or not, writing for me is something that re-energizes me, that creates energy. Finding your own coach, finding your own mentor, reaching out to someone who you can vent to, someone you can trust. And I don't care if you're an outside, so you could be an outside the organization consultant, you could be an inside change agent. Change agency is hard. You need to make a list of like, what is your personality type? Where do you get energy? Yoga, exercise, walks in the park, whatever it takes. And you need to manage your energy level. You need to manage your battery level on a daily basis, a weekly basis, on a quarterly basis. The other thing is, I think as change agents, we can never be off. So and what I mean by that is we have to be present every day. We have to bring it every day. So we need to be really chargeable offline somehow so that we can bring it every day. Even if it's someone that you can trust, that you can go and scream at and really vent to and just say anything at all. So everyone is listening to this as Agile is a change agency play, and we need to make sure that we're charging our batteries. I was spewing that, Mary. I hope you got something else to throw into play. There's a lot of questions, man.
I know, and this is one dear to my heart, and probably not going to be surprised that I'm pulling it up. So it says, any tips for challenging the mindset that Agile is just for software development teams?
Ooh.
I know, right? I love this one. I feel that, because the software development has been so successful, and what we're seeing, and you can tell I have some data points, is the next areas of Agile transformation is digital transformation, which is other areas outside the development team, right? So I'm currently engaged in a couple of clients now where we're trying to work with, think about it this way. Hey, say you're HR. We always get constant issues of, hey, that team over there is not performing. And people come to HR and tell you, what if HR had a toolbox of Agile and Lean toolbox that says, okay, we have a toolbox to make great teams with Agile and Lean concepts in it. And so, and what we're finding is that using Agile Lean techniques outside of IT is just as successful. And that's how you make the digital transformation more successful. So in tips for challenging the mindset, my first question is, what problem are we trying to solve? What areas of teams are not performing in the rest of the organization? Why is that team not performing? Does that team have a mission? Do they have a vision? Do they actually know why they come to work every day? Are they happy doing it? Or do they have bad eggs? It's the same issues that we have with Scrum teams and building great teams, same exact type of frameworks you can use on non-IT. So the tips for changing the mindset I always ask the question, is there not areas, teams outside of IT that could use improvement? Are they as productive as do they have as much quality output? Are they predictable? Are they happy? And the answers a lot of times are no. Well, then why wouldn't we use a framework that really is about transparency, inspection, adaptation, and continuous improvement? Why not? Why wouldn't we change that mindset? So that's something I'm really passionate about, but it absolutely works outside of software development teams.
Cool. I don't want to react to that. I want to react to a couple questions. Lena, I just want to note, Lena said, our CEO said this morning that the culture is the positive behaviors you reward and the negative behaviors you tolerate. Exactly. So, and that's setting the culture, and it's not just for the CEO, the entire leadership team. So it cascades. Another theme, Sheehy. It might be fun for the leader transformation team to do their own sprint review for the rest of the organization. Transparency from the top. Theme, that's exactly the point. I'll share a secret. I've never seen an Agile transformation team, a leadership-driven Agile transformation team succeed in their first 2 sprints, ever, ever, ever. They fail. And I love it when they fail. And I love it when they're transparent in their failure, because it shows humility and it shows transparency and it shows that they're learning, and they'll expose that to their teams, and we learn together. And their empathy, the other neat thing, there's these side effects. Mary was talking about sort of the execution dynamics of the transformation team. But to me, there's some soft side effects, like empathy, for gosh sakes. You start empathizing how hard it is to deliver on your commitments at a team level. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about that structure. Then there's one more I want to get to. Where's it at? Oh, did I lose it? Management, Kevin Gordon, management can't stop launching 1,000 ships at once, so we can't get sustainable cadence. And folks are on too many projects at once. Any recommendations to get them to stop the madness? Stop the madness.
Stop.
Have the conversation. Whip limit. Show them the churn. Show them the
cycle time, lead
churn.
time. Yeah.
Cycle time, lead time. That came up earlier. Shove it. I mean, in the most loving way possible. Shove it under their nose and show them what the effect that has on churn in the organization. Run a pilot project where you limit WIP in just one team from 10 things per team to 3 things per team, or to 2 things per team. Show them the difference that it makes in productivity and in team health. Mary.
So ironically enough, I used a Miro board once to show that. I put the teams in boxes. I put in the Miro board. I put the projects on the Scrum teams. I showed how many how many team members were on each Scrum team, and then I showed it took the visual of, hey, here is the number of projects you have on each Scrum team. Just having a list in Excel spreadsheet was not enough, but using Miro and using the visibility that it brought was a really great way for me to show. You have 15 projects on one team. You have, 1 project on one team. Compare the teams. Productive, seemed to, perceived to be an great execution team versus crappy team. Perceived not to execute. 15 versus 1, right? So I'm not trying to pitch Miro, but I love Miro, and I use it visually to show some of the stuff, these things to the leadership, because they just can't visualize it from a spreadsheet. Oh, it looks fine. There's plenty. Well, when you actually break it down of this is what, they're like, oh crap, we can't do that.
One of the things in my travels as a coach, it's probably the number one, it's at least in the top 3, but I think it's the number one problem I see is people biting off more than they can chew. And it just boggles my mind, and it slows them down. So they think they're faster, they're biting off too many things, they can't chew them and complete them. So run any experiment to show them the productivity sort of improvement of going from those churn environments to not. If you can do anything to get there and make it visual, like Mary was saying. But it's to me, it's systemic. Most organizations, probably 90% of the organizations I encounter are biting off. Mary, I think you have the same view. They have too much WIP, to use that Kanban term.
Yeah.
Real quickly, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the things that you can do is try to make it that no more than 2 or 3 features are on a Scrum team at a time. Even with that said, one of those features is your BAU bucket. Please put transparency to that BAU bucket, because that a lot of times is 70% and you only have 30% to do project work, but nobody's really showing that. So just food for thought.
Chris Fernandez Everett said something. A lot of my experience of sustaining Agile is continuing communication. Once you transform, once the organization is a place, you can call it largely agile. What are your recommendations for how to communicate the needs to shift to help it endure? I would talk, Chris, and it's a really great question. It's sort of what wrapper for me. So one is storytelling. Start telling stories of success. Start telling stories. Continue to share stories. Everyone at a leadership level, at a team level, at a management level, share the stories of success. Even share stories of failure and share how teams responded to failure. But become a storytelling organization. That's one thing. The second thing is focus the stories not on story points or stories or any of the tactics. Focus them on behavior, so that you're not rewarding going through. So don't reward, are we running Scrum or are we running Kanban? It's reward the behavior. For example, look how we're reducing WIP and look what it's doing. Someone courageously moved a team from 20 stories in flight to 2. And they got them done for the first time in a century. So talk about the behaviors, and I think that keeps the momentum going.
I think we're at time, Bob.
Mary, take a quick one. Come on, you have to close.
So my close is, how critical is including HR in the Agile transformation? And I say extremely, extremely critical. They are part of your transformation team. You're bringing them along from a skill sets gap, skill sets analysis. You're bringing them along around career pathing and job families. They're extremely, extremely critical, but they should be part of your transformation team.
Thank you, Bob and Mary, so much for the candid conversation. I've been writing down a bunch of notes and key takeaways. I think one thing that I just want to highlight, that transformation isn't a straight line. The job as a leader and a change agent is to inspire. And so many different words came out today as far as what can you do to inspire, and it's providing courage, joy, leadership, self-awareness, humility, empowerment. And then your job as a change agent too is to figure out what recharges you and how can you inspire for your team. And that's finding a mentor, participate in agile groups and discussions, maybe write, do some blog, or do yoga, what makes you happy. But this isn't an easy conversation and there's a lot of work, but hopefully this resonated with everyone. Bob, Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
It was great.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.